What's going on, everybody? Going to be another recap of the day. Give me about 15 minutes of your time. We're going to recap the entire trading day. I'm going to teach you guys a little pattern that I like to use, the OTS and the Momo combined with Delta to save your trades on days like this. So for today, we had a very rotational day, a very back and forth, stuck in the value area type of day. The 30-minute candles just kept bouncing off the value low and the value high until a little bit around 12:30, and that's when it started to try to break out of that value, out of that balance. So a little trick that I like to do, if you guys use Delta, if you guys use some of our indicators, the Momo or the Oasis trading suite, if you see, and let me pull up my Addis here, if you see a lack of value, a lack of delta on these lows or these highs of these candles as they are approaching the value low or the value high, and simultaneously we see a purple bottom or a gold top on the Momo, as well as the blue pivot or the orange pivot on the OTS, these can signal some very strong reversals. Obviously, basically looking for that rotation to the other side of the value area. So in this case, let's pretend the value low was around this area, which it was at the time. And we have that blue pivot and we have that purple bottom warning. That just gives us a little bit of a bonus that reminds us, hey, we're probably going to rotate back to that value high. So we were already looking for that rotation on that D-shaped day anyway. This is just giving us that confirmation that it's probably going to bottom out and we can look for that rotational trade. So if you look at it on the delta, basically what we're going to be looking for is a lack of value, a lack of delta on those lows and those highs. So for example, we saw this a couple times today. We had these lows right here really struggling to find any significant delta to the downside. They were also really struggling to break the prior candle's 30-minute low. Okay, so when we see stuff like that, we already want to be a buyer. We already know our trade plan is to buy the value low of these moves, right? The value low of these D-shaped days. So that little trick that I showed you, look for that lack of volume, look for that lack of value, the lack of delta on those 30-minute lows, those candles, and then look for, on the Momo, we want to look for those purple bottom warnings as well as the blue pivots to help our entries. Okay, so how would we actually trade this today? When you see that blue pivot come in, it's basically telling you, hey, this is a potential bottoming area, potential cupping area where we're going to cup from a down move into an up move. Okay, a shift in momentum. If you guys know my style of trading, you guys know I love trading shifts in momentum from one side to the other, right? So when you have that blue pivot coming in, it's kind of telling you, hey, keep an eye on this area, or that purple bottom warning, keep an eye on this area, look for that cupping pattern or a V-shaped pattern. Look for one of these bottoming patterns. We are probably going to shift our momentum to the upside. Okay. So when we go back and we look at the delta and we see a very weak tail where the bottom part of that tail is just not generating any significant seller delta, then we can potentially start to look to buy that area. Okay. And whether your final confirmation is like a higher low or possibly some buyer clusters coming in, whatever it may be, there's many ways you can kind of finally press the button there. But let's just say your general entry is somewhere around that pivot. Your stop loss is below those candle lows, whether it's a 30-minute low, 5-minute low, 1-minute low, whatever it may be, just your local lows, right? Stop loss below the local lows, and we are looking for that rotation. Okay, so typically with these trades, we are going to be trading around that value low. Let me go ahead and pull up the value area for the morning there. So we're going to be trading around the value low, and we're going to be looking for that rotation to that value high. If you guys were watching the morning stream, or if you were in the Discord in the afternoon, that value area was about 10 or 15 points. It wasn't too too crazy. Volatility wasn't too high today. Okay. So that would have been a potential entry around here, stop loss around the lows, and then you're looking for that rotation back to the value high. Like I said, anywhere from 10 to 15 points on today. Okay, let's look for a couple of other examples here. We had an orange pivot and a gold shading on this move right here, but we did not see a significant drop in momentum. Momentum is actually going up on that move right there. Let's look at the difference between this pivot right here. So we have a pivot coming in on the value high. The value high, I think at the time was around like 14 to 16. It was somewhere around that general area. The pivot came in. Look at the drop in momentum here. So our momentum is coming down quite a bit. We're putting in a lower high in momentum, even though price is going up. We know that's a bear div, right? Price is going up, momentum is going down. That signals a bear div. Let's go ahead and combine that with delta. So that was around, let's say, 1030. So let's pull up 1030 here. If we combine that with the delta footprint, look at this fall off in volume. We do not see any significant buyer delta holding on to this high. We have a couple of little clusters here and there. There's a little cluster there. There's a couple of clusters there, a couple there. So they had strong buyers on the way up. But if you guys traded this at the time, on the way back down, they did not protect that cluster, those nodes. Okay, so you had the breakout volume. You did not protect it, and it came right back down. And we can see that in the volume. Because typically when you go for a breakout like that, but you don't protect it on the way back down, you will not create a node on the high of that candle. The volume will just continue to fall off as you approach that high. Okay, so our node was actually way down here at 15. We had another node down here at 13. We did not have a significant node on the high. All right. That tells us that the value was most likely being found on the way back down, not on the way up. Which, if we look at the 1 minute time frames, that was around right here where our momentum was shifting back to the downside. Okay, let's look at some more examples here. We had a couple of bottom warnings here when we were testing the value low. We had some purple bottom warnings here, but we didn't have any pivots. So if you have the purple warning on the value low, that does give you a little bit of a bonus, but the extra bonus is from that pivot and the purple shading. Okay, when they're giving you the combo. All right. So let's look at the cash value area here. Let's go ahead and pull a profile from 930, and let's take a look at this low right here. This one did not quite make it to that value low. It actually was testing the POC. So this was a failure to rotate. So this was that move, I think we talked about this on stream, where we were trying to rotate down to that value low, and VWAP was right around here. So we were failing to rotate into that value low because we were bouncing off the POC and we were bouncing off of VWAP. So if you were trying to buy that failure to rotate, if you were trying to be a buyer on VWAP or a buyer on the POC, that little purple bottom warning there was helping your decision. It was giving you that little bonus. Let's go ahead and extend that volume profile. So pretty much the same thing here. Right on that value low, we have that purple warning just telling us, hey, it's probably bottoming out here. Just keep an eye on that pattern that we talked about. Is it a V-shape reversal or is it a cupping reversal, right? Do we have that cupping reversal in momentum? If you guys like to trade shifts in momentum, you really need to get used to that cupping pattern where it's either a U shape or an N shape. You're going from that bullish momentum and kind of rolling over into that bearish momentum, or you're going from the bearish momentum and rolling over to the bullish momentum. Okay, what does that look like on the delta footprint? Well, we covered that earlier. What it looks like on the delta footprint when that cupping pattern is happening on the 1 minute it typically means that the lows of those candles or the highs of those candles are falling off in volume significantly. You are not establishing any node to act as a support for buyers or a resistance for sellers. Okay, so combine that fall off in volume with that cupping pattern, and you will find much easier reversals. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and continue this. So if we continue our cash profile here, this one wasn't as good. Unfortunately, it was on the POC, but we did have that bullish pivot come in, that blue pivot that kind of coincides with a cupping pattern back to the upside, and that called for a pretty strong move there. Gave you a nice little move to the upside. All right, let's quickly look at a few more examples here. You guys get the idea. So here's another one right here, blue pivot, purple warning, gave you a bounce back into that value high. Same thing here, blue pivot, purple warning, gave you a bounce back into that value high. And then we had that ridiculous poor high. So if we go back to the TPOs here, let me go back, sorry, wrong charts. Let me go back over here. If we look at the TPO, the market profile, look at this poor high today. You kept stalling out on that 25 to 27 node, and you just could not find any buyers above that level. So if you were being a breakout buyer today, which you really shouldn't have been, because once again, when you're trading a D-shaped balance, you are a buyer around the value low, you are a seller around the value high. You don't really want to trade breakouts. Now, we tried to break balance today by holding above that value high, so I can understand if you were trying to trade those breakouts, I kind of get what you were looking at, okay? You were trying to trade that break of balance. Now, for our trade plan, we used 6,025 as one of our main targets, and that was the high of day. Basically, that 27 breakout could not have any value hold above that 25. And from 25 to 45 is a bit more like a zone of resistance, so it can really top out anywhere in that area. And that's kind of what we saw on ES. Now on NASDAQ, we had the same thing. We had a poor high get established on all these highs right here, and it turned out to be a rotation back down to the value lows. Okay, so let's recap. When you have these D-shape rotational days, pay close attention when you are approaching the value low or the value high to your delta, to your 30-minute highs and lows. Are you establishing significant volume breaking down into that value low or pushing above that value high? If you are not finding those significant nodes, then you want to look for that pattern that we talked about earlier. If you don't have access to the Momo or the OTS, then just look for those cupping patterns, right? You want to look for that cupping pattern on the 1 minute time frame. Are you cupping back to the upside or are you cupping back to the downside? If you have access to the Momo and the OTS, look for those blue pivots, those orange pivots. Look for those purple bottom warnings and those gold top warnings. They are very helpful on those D-shaped rotational days, just giving you that little bit of a bonus for when you want to buy the value low and sell the value high. But all right, guys, that was pretty much it for today. It was one of those choppy D-shaped rotational days, not a whole lot of high strike rate patterns on days like today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video, enjoyed that recap. Hit that like button, be sure to subscribe. And by the way, if you guys don't have access to the Momo and the OTS, let me help you out. Post your TradingView username in the comments below, and I'll give you guys access to it for a small trial. But all right, guys, that's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.